Thank you for tuning in to this fourth YouTube seminar on recovering and rebuilding from depression and anxiety. Our presenter is Dr. Jim Stout, a Presbyterian pastor who served in 5 churches and is a popular speaker and counselor to many. Besides pastoring, Dr. Stout has spoken to professional athletes, business and professional leaders, high school and college students, mental illness conferences, and other venues. He has started and led numerous support groups for those dealing with depression, anxiety, and other mental illnesses. He and his wife Leah are celebrating their 56th wedding anniversary this June. They have 2 sons, Jim Jr. and John, and 5 energetic grandchildren. The first seminar discussed an overview of depression and anxiety. The second dealt with the good and bad effects of depression and anxiety. The third covered various treatments, either helpful, unhelpful, or risky. And today's seminar will discuss tricks of the trade, practical hands-on tools and strategies for recovering and rebuilding from depression and anxiety. And now, as his wife, I am pleased to introduce to you Dr. Jim Stout.
Congratulations on having the courage and willingness to learn how to get through your mental health crisis of depression and/or anxiety. Today's 4th and final seminar will discuss tricks of the trade, practical hands-on tools and strategies for recovering and rebuilding from the effects of depression and anxiety. If you missed one of the first 3 sessions, please feel free to go back and revisit them, and also to share the information with friends and others who might benefit. All they need to do is go to YouTube and type in Dr. Jim Stout. Let's start our time together with a little levity. 2 Eskimos sitting in a kayak were chilly, so they lit a fire in their craft. Unsurprisingly, it sank, proving once again that you can have your kayak and heat it too. And now, let's take a look at some church bulletin bloopers. Scouts are saving aluminum cans, bottles, and other items to be recycled. Proceeds will be used to cripple children. That's a beauty. Another one says, low self-esteem support group will meet Thursday at 7 to 8:30 p.m. Please use back door. Another blooper, Weight Watchers will meet at 7 p.m. Please use large double door at the side entrance. Another blooper, please remember in prayer the many who are sick of our church and community. And lastly, the outreach committee of our church has enlisted 25 visitors to make calls on people who are not afflicted with any church. Before we begin our focus together on tools and strategies, please listen to this disclaimer. My words in this 4-part seminar program on recovering from depression and anxiety are not meant to be psychiatric, psychological, or medical counseling. The information I am sharing will be that of pastoral care and at times hypothetical. My words are not intended to substitute for specific medical or psychological advice. Please consult with your medical or psychological provider about your own unique needs. Having said this, please feel free to take notes. I encourage you. There have been plenty of studies that say that when we write something down, we retain it 60% better than simply trying to remember it. You'll notice that I slur a little bit in my words. This is because I'm dealing with a lightweight condition of Parkinson's disease. It's not that I have a mouthful of marbles or that I've been sipping on too much Johnny Walker. It's just that I'm dealing with this little speech impediment. So we'll get through this together. A well-known Chinese proverb says, to know the road ahead, ask those coming back. Well, I'm one of those coming back. I am a wounded healer. I've been there, done that with depression, anxiety, panic attacks. I will be sharing personal experience and evidence-based research. One of the keys to taking back your life from the ravages of depression and anxiety is to take charge of your own recovery, to become your own mental health expert, be your own case manager. Don't simply wait passively for some kind of a pill to fix you or some kind of an automatic counseling insight to fix you forever. Anxiety or depressive episodes don't simply come out of the blue. Nearly always they've got some stress-related or medication-related cause. Obviously, what has worked for me and others may not work for you. You yourself will need to experiment to find what's most helpful and workable for you. What worked a year ago or last week may not work now for you. The key is to experiment. As you listen to this lecture and have listened to the other 3, I encourage you to implement the slogan from AA, take what works and leave the rest. Jesus taught a very fascinating parable one time. He said, quote, "The master praised the crooked manager." And why? Because he knew how to look after himself. Streetwise people are smarter in this regard than law-abiding citizens. They are on constant alert, looking for angles, surviving by their wits. I want you to be smart in the same way, but for what is right, using every adversity to stimulate you to creative survival, to concentrate your attention on the bare essentials so you'll live, really live, and not complacently and just getting by on good behavior. That is in Luke chapter 16 of the Message translation. In the minutes ahead, you will learn suggested workable guidelines that can help you endure a major mind upset and find new freedom. You don't have to do these in any kind of chronological order, but make sure you go through all of them at some point. Please continue to experiment for what will work best for you. These steps, these guidelines are not the only way. They are my suggested way, a way. Every person's troubles are unique and require a customized plan for recovery, healing, and rebuilding. In order to move on in your life from some of your hurts, it's important to move from why me questions to, okay, I've been through this, now what do I do? Maybe the big question is, what kind of life do I now have? What kind of life do I want to build? I've tried many ways, many times to get on top of my depression or anxiety, but so far I'm not having much success. Hopefully, this last lecture will give you some very pointed, practical helps. Remember, just because you may have been a victim of a family upraising or some other trauma in your life, you still need to take responsibility for healing yourself. You don't have to be a helpless bystander anymore. The focus of our time together will be to discuss very specific, concrete ways that you can implement in your own life. I'm going to share, I believe, 14 specific guidelines to follow. There are suggested tips. Guideline number 1. Be aware from now on of your vulnerability to relapses of depression or anxiety attacks. Long ago, Socrates said, quote, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Sun Tzu once said, "If you know your enemies and you know yourself, you will never be defeated." In the Bible, in Proverbs 27, we read, "Examine yourselves. The prudent see the danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty." I must say that prior to my learning about recovery tools and techniques, I would find myself totally out of control and not know how it happened and what to do. Remember the 25%, 75% rule? That means 25% or 1/4 of depressive or anxiety episodes are caused by something medication-based. That means it could be caused by a physical disease, surgery of some kind, a side effect, or bad mixing of medications. But 75%, 3/4 of your depressive or anxiety attacks are caused by stress and trauma. Should you find yourself in the midst of a depressive or anxiety episode, remember that every instance of these twin monsters can be a learning experience when you're able to reflect on what happens so you can become even better prepared and quicker to react the next time around. That means when you fall, when you have a relapse, fall forward. Back in my college days, I did a little Golden Glove boxing, and if you ever watched a boxing match, you'll notice that in a boxing match at its start, right before the opening bell sounds, the referee has each fighter come to the center of the ring for last-minute instructions. Usually the last thing the ref says is, "Gentlemen, protect yourself at all times." This is excellent advice for those of us who are extra vulnerable to insensitive or unkind comments or actions of others, family members, friends, co-workers, church members, and other people. So we must learn, like a boxer does, how to protect ourselves at all times. If you sprain your ankle, it's important to wrap it. Or if you break your arm, it's important to put a cast on it to protect it. Imagine this illustration. Pretend for a moment that you see a 1 foot in diameter red balloon, a child's dodgeball, a safety pin, and a roll of gauze tape. Before your first episode of depression or anxiety, you had thick rhinoceros-type skin that protected you from a hurtful comment or deed from someone. Visualize this. Now look at, in your mind, me picking up a safety pin and punching it several times into the kid's dodgeball. Nothing happens, really. You can bounce it. It'll be like the Energizer Bunny. It takes a lick and keeps on ticking. Even after several pricks of the needle, the ball keeps on bouncing without much loss. After your first bout with depression or anxiety, or any subsequent ones, your skin becomes very thin like a balloon, and it is easily popped by even the slightest negative word or deed. Therefore, you and I must protect ourselves by wrapping our sprained brain. All pro athletes, as a matter of fact, most college athletes, are required to wrap their injured ankle if they sprained an ankle before every practice and every game, or be fined. If they go down, the whole team suffers. If you go down, you, your family, and your friends will be injured. So hopefully this particular seminar will focus on using various recovery tools and strategies just like you would gauze to tape and protect your brain, your emotions, your soul. The first step in caring for ourselves is to admit to ourselves that we are more vulnerable to slights by others than the average person. If we let a negative occur, it will quickly become like a snowball rolling downhill. Soon that little snowball becomes a full-blown avalanche that wipes out all in its path. The hard fact to face is that we depression and anxiety sufferers have in fact extra thin skin. We have a sprained brain. So we need to wrap our brain instead of gauze tape. We need to use various tools of recovery. The knowledge of our weaknesses and our enemy is necessity. One tool of self-protection is simply to be aware of the symptoms of depression or anxiety, like becoming aware of an oncoming cold. You sense your runny nose, your aching all over feeling, your extra tiredness are signs that you've got a cold on the horizon and you need to take steps to prevent it. So when we see these things, smart people take extra rest time, Zicam, zinc, vitamin C, or some over-the-counter medication to halt the cold from morphing into pneumonia. Another way of protecting ourselves is to be aware of the danger signs of stress. Stress is a very accurate predictor of our vulnerability to a crash or a meltdown. Our alcoholic friends in AA use an acronym HALTS, H-A-L-T-S. I've expanded it to say HALTS FALSES to alert them that they are skating on thin ice, that they are cruising for bruising, and they need to take immediate action to avoid or minimize a dangerous or even life-threatening relapse. Here are the stress warning signs. The following warning signs can help clarify what thoughts and emotions are influencing your thinking or feeling. These warnings can lead to a dangerous problem if not dealt with appropriately. The first letters of these warning signs are HALTS FOSSES, H-A-L-T-S, F-O-S-S-E-S. Each letter stands for a serious response someone may have to his or her circumstances. Be aware of these HALTS FOSSES. These are warning signs, and they are our enemies. These signs can trigger a serious mental or emotional upset, a depression, relapse, or some other emotional struggle. AA just uses HALTS, H-A-L-T-S. However, I've added a few more stressors to my definition of a dangerous stress warning signs. H stands for hungry. Hungry for the increasing practice of an addiction to a substance like food, alcohol, illegal or legal drugs, or craving or a compulsive behavior such as irresponsible spending, gambling, sexual promiscuity, pornography, or overeating. A stands for anger. Anger that comes in the form of resentment, hate, bitterness at yourself, other people, circumstances, your workload, interruptions, disappointments with yourself or others, health problems, financial difficulties, insurance conflicts, excessive paperwork, or playing corporate telephone tag hell. L stands for loneliness. Having lonely thoughts or feelings of being neglected, avoided, or unappreciated by your spouse, children, co-workers, or supervisors, church people, neighbors, friends, or others. Feeling and thinking, quote, no one really understands or cares about me, end quote. No one really listens or even wants to listen because they all have their own agendas, motives, and self-interests at heart, not mine. T stands for tired. being tired, fatigued, exhausted, and drained from working too many hours at too fast a pace. This tiredness can come from too much empty time or lack of purpose. Or perhaps your tiredness results from not taking enough breaks for yourself for hobbies, exercise, and entertainment. Maybe you are depleted from too many administrative details like emails, letters, bills, writing, typing, tedious research, or unending paperwork. Exhausted from late night socializing and partying or talking too long with people by phone or at social gatherings. S stands for self-pity, soaking in self-pity, marinating in poor me, such as, I don't deserve this raw deal, this illness. I keep trying, but things will never get better. I continually fail. No one understands me. I'll never beat my negative circumstances. I'll never beat this addiction, this bout of depression. I'll never make the impact on the world that I always wanted to. I'm washed up, useless. F stands for fears. Fearing that your job, stresses, financial status, depression, or addiction will never improve. You battle anxieties over health problems, criticisms, rejections, abandonments, decreasing strength to fight depression or addiction. You are troubled that your medications or counseling are not working or that your weight problems won't go away. O stands for overwhelmed. Feeling overwhelmed by a hectic schedule with little or no time for rest or refreshment. You are tortured by deadlines, job responsibilities, social commitments, unfinished to-do lists. You are swamped by insurance, tax forms, and others. You endure constant phone interruptions from telemarketers, friends, and others. S stands for sleep. Sleep quality suffers. You sleep too little, too much, or too fitfully, or it is hard to get to sleep. S stands for swearing. Swearing increasingly erupts. For those who have not sworn much at all, they get a bad case of gutter gums. Your swearing increasingly erupts. Previously, you could be fairly well in control of your outbreaks of gutter gum, but now just about anything can set off your swearing. E stands for expectations. Unmet or shattered expectations of yourself, to lose weight, to achieve a goal, or to control your meltdowns, or your expectations of others, that they will keep their promise, spend time with you, ask questions about your interests and other expectations. And lastly, S stands for stresses. Stresses of any kind upset you. This catch-all category includes any situation, person, or place that gives you an inner owie and makes you think negatively or feel tense, nervous, angry, or fearful. My friends, the quicker you and I learn to spot these warning signs of stress, the sooner we can take positive action for our own well-being and recovery. Guideline number 2, self-care. In the Bible, the greatest commandment is to love God with all of our heart, mind, and soul. But the second commandment, Jesus said, was to love others as you love yourself. That's in Mark chapter 12. Shakespeare said this in King Henry V. Self-love, my liege, is not so vile a sin as self-neglecting. Self-care starts with positive self-talk. The Bible says, keep your heart with all vigilance, for out of it flow the streams of life. This means talking about positive things about myself instead of putting myself down at all times. Believe it or not, part of self-care involves humor, to maintain a sense of humor or to build it. Centuries ago, the writer of Proverbs chapter 17 said, a joyful heart is the health to the body, but a depressed spirit dries up the bones. Writer Leo Busuglia says, a sense of humor helps us to forget, even for a moment, our often inflated sense of seriousness and propriety. It is a declaration of our superiority over the woes and calamities that may befall us. I have discovered that jokes and a sense of humor and practical tricks are a new hobby of mine. I absolutely enjoy sharing cartoons and tricks and jokes with my doctors, my friends, their secretaries, and other people. It takes my mind off of my suffering and helps lighten their load, even for a moment. Another way of implementing self-care is to use positive mementos like pictures and souvenirs like coffee cups and others from trips you've taken. The last line from Douglas Dunn's Disenchantments says, quote, look to the living, love them, and hold on. So when you get down or stressed out, having pictures in your wallet, your cell phone, your office, the refrigerator, the living room, helps you to remember part of your support team. Another very important part of self-care is to maintain your spiritual connection to God or your higher power. I happen to be a follower of Jesus Christ. I became one of his followers in college. So for me, mine is a little bit different than maybe some others. Perhaps my best prayer in stress times is, God, please help me. Your spiritual connection to God or your higher power is your inner gyroscope. For me, I use the Bible's information, prayer, meditation, and other things to strengthen my relationship with God. You may choose whatever works for you. Since I work with Navy SEALs from time to time, one of their little mottos is, never stop learning, never stop training. Another friend of mine says, knowledge is necessity. It is a lifelong process. And believe it or not, I've discovered half the battle of getting well and staying well is to know your enemy and know ways of defeating him. It could be through mentoring from somebody else, reading, podcasts, videos, conferences, seminars, books, CDs, etc. It will be helpful to educate yourself, your family, and your friends about the facts and seriousness about your illness, your treatment options, what triggers your depressions and anxieties, some of the warning signs, symptoms that you may be close to or are currently having a bad episode. It will be important for you and your friends and family to know the symptoms of depression or anxiety, because sometimes they will pick up on those quicker than you will if you begin to manifest some of them. I encourage you, friends, to keep notes and articles and books and booklets somewhere where they are safe so that you can save them in due time with somebody else. By knowing what the symptoms of depression or anxiety are and knowing what your Halsfosses are can be like the red warning light, the red idiot light in a car. Years ago when we lived in Key Biscayne, Florida, a friend of mine was driving across the state and his red light came on, but he paid no attention to it. The result was he burned out his engine. And if we ignore these red lights, these stresses, these symptoms, we can really cause some bad damage to ourselves or other people. So we must become aware of the warning signs that trigger us from certain people, places, and things, even TV ads, shows, news, insurance companies, phone companies, and others. It's important to identify your triggers. Mine happen to be resentment, anger, being overwhelmed, being slandered, or being treated unfairly. My website, drjimstout.com, has some important resources in it. There are a couple that may or may not be there. Bad Childhood, Good Life by Dr. Laura Schlesinger. This Is Not the Life I Ordered by 4 or 5 women. Living Well with Depression and Manic Depression by John McNamee. Excellent book on depression and anxiety. Winning Over Depression by Mary Ellen Copeland. Her website is mentalhealthrecovery.com. Other books are When Someone You Love Has Depression by Susan Noonan. And Sheffield has penned the book How You Can Survive When They're Depressed. Mary Ellen Copeland also has an excellent little short book called WRAP, RAP. Excellent, very practical. It's used worldwide with great success. Another book is Does Your Man Have the Blues? Another one is How I Stayed Alive When My Brain Was Trying to Kill Me by Susan Blauner. And for men, there is actually a website called mantherapy.org for men who are a little reluctant to check out therapy for themselves. A crucial strategy for fighting stress, experts say, is to stay connected to friends and relatives. When our biological families no longer function well, the only option is to create a family of choice, a family defined by a shared purpose and mutual respect without ties to blood. As an adult, you can bond with others and have a family you need. Let's face it, some friends, some family members are simply toxic and not safe. So concentrate on cultivating family members and friends that you can call on when you have a need and you can trust them. Ano de Crescenzo says this: we are all angels with but one wing, and only by embracing each other can we fly. Support groups are an invaluable source for learning to recognize the ebbs and flows of your illness, including potential triggers and other dangers, and for picking up a personal bag of tricks to navigate your way through each day, from managing anger to dealing with stress to not having a meltdown when your family starts pushing your buttons. Over time, what once left you helpless will become more manageable. Because of our tendency to isolate ourselves, which can result in our illness feeding upon itself. Getting out of the house is critical, even if it's just to go to the mailbox to get mail or meet with a friend for coffee. There are all kinds of support groups, 12-step groups and others, some religious, some secular. You can attend an AA meeting, a DBSA, Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance, NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, AA meeting, Overeaters Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Emotions Anonymous. I've been to all those types of meetings in the past. The atmosphere is non-judgmental, and I pick workable recovery tips from others, as well as good support. Longtime educator Howard Hendricks says, quote, "A man without a support group is an accident waiting to happen." If your life is coming apart or slowly deteriorating, call your therapist, your psychiatrist, or support group right away. Your inclination will be to shrug this off or postpone calling, but don't. Your health professional will likely have some clues as to whether something physical or chemical or hormonal may be contributing to your mood. Therefore, contact and schedule a therapy session as soon as possible. There are, of course, many types of talk therapy that can help you address issues in your life and learn new ways to cope with your illness. Goal setting is an important part of the talk therapy. Talk therapy can also help you to do some of these: understand your illness, overcome fears or insecurities, cope with stress, make sense of past traumatic experiences, separate your true personality from your moods and their swings caused by your illness of depression or anxiety, identify triggers that may worsen your symptoms, improve relationship with family and friends, establish a stable, dependable routine, develop a plan for coping with crises, understand why things bother you and what you can do about them, end destructive habits such as drinking, using drugs, overspending, or risky sex. Other support tools involve peer counseling. Peer counseling is when you and another struggler meet together for coffee. You say to your friend, "I've got something I need to talk about and I don't want to be fixed or interrupted. I'll tell you what, would you listen to me for 20 minutes without doing any of those things and then hug me and tell me I'm going to be okay? And then I will listen to you for 20 minutes. And then after our 40 minutes is up, if we want input, we'll ask for it." That's called peer counseling. Very, very helpful as part of your support system network. Then you can use bookending as also a support. That means this: if an alcoholic is going to a party where he probably will find temptations to drink, he bookends with a fellow AA member. He says, "I'm going to this party. I think I can handle the drinking temptations, but I will call you on my way there, and I will call you as soon as it's over to let you know how it went, good, bad, and ugly." So you know that somebody's rooting for you. Your struggle may not be with alcohol, but it may be with simply a toxic person or toxic meeting. Bookending, very helpful. I've used it very much in my life. Another support tool is simply to share your highs and lows with your spouse, family members, and friends. You talk with them about the best and the worst experience of your day or your week. Then listen to them share the same thing with you. Bottom line is that loners are extremely vulnerable to devastating bouts of anxiety or depression. This is similar to how wild dogs stalk a herd of buffalo. Have you ever seen how a wild dog attacks a buffalo? The dogs travel behind the buffalo herd and watch to see which one is staying not close to the rest. Ever so subtly, the dogs surround the buffalo that looks weakest or has wandered away from the group, and they start to bite at his hide and nip at it. Little by little, the dogs tear apart the buffalo's skin until he falls down in the dirt, where they pounce on him and go in for the kill. This is how it is with your small group. You, like the buffalo, will not even notice the danger around you. So make attendance a priority. Stay close to your positive people, friends, or group, and be aware that there are people looking for an opportunity to get you off track, put you down. Your efforts toward recovery through group attendance or sharing one-on-one with other strugglers must come first, sometimes even before family, job, and close friends. Remember, what happens to a weak buffalo can also happen to us. Out here on the west coast of California, we have big sequoia trees, sometimes 200 to 300 feet tall. Rip through those sequoia forests 50 to 100 miles an hour sometimes, and yet they never blow over. Do you know why? How deep do you think their roots go? The roots of a sequoia tree go down between 10 and 20 feet, that's all. But the reason those trees are not blown over is because their roots are interlocked with each other. And so it is when you are interlocked with other supportive people, that's what will keep you afloat. Guideline number 6. Use distraction as a critical tool for staying afloat during a depressive or anxiety bout. Dangers when you're going through a very severe case of depression or anxiety is looping, doing instant replays of a past or recent hurt. Those constant replays of prior injuries are like taking a bucket and putting a load of dog poops in it and stirring it around. And the more you stir it, the worse it stinks. After a while, you need to get rid of the poop bucket. It's important to keep a list of mood boosters to distract the looping and the bad memories and the fears that escalate and cascade through your mind. I suggest that you create and have at the ready a list of things that are proven mood lifters that can distract your thinking from negatives. You can add to this list over time. First, start out by jotting down all the people, places, and things or actions that you already know can lighten your mood and bring you a sense of joy and gratitude. One thing you can do to distract yourself is simply to do something that's fun and worthwhile. Maybe practice a hobby. For me, writing is what helped bring me back from the dead. For me, it is a very healing activity. Much of my writing, as a matter of fact, of 13 books and probably well over 30 essays, was when I was very depressed and anxious. I found that as I was writing, I was actually reclaiming my life one page at a time. Another tool for distracting your fears and melancholy is to improve your sense of humor. Merry heart makes for good medicine. That means maybe buying a joke book and reading a joke out loud to yourself or someone else. Buying a practical trick, play on a friend or a stranger, or renting and watching a funny video like Three Stooges, I Love Lucy, Groundhog Day, Trains, Planes, and Automobiles. It may mean browsing through several of your favorite stores, sporting goods stores, housewares, clothing, or other things. Another way of distracting yourself is to actually set a time limit to how long you will allow yourself to soak in a pity party or be depressed or fret over some anxiety. Like the way Tammy Faye Baker Mesner, the televangelist, said, all of life is an attitude. There are a lot of people who feel sorry for themselves, and one thing I know for sure is that pity parties will kill you. If you do have one, dear, be sure to make it short. Strangely, when going through a bad, panicky time or very depressive episode, I actually said, well, I'll let myself soak on the pity pot now for about 3 more days or another week, and then I'll move ahead. Interestingly, that time limit helped me to break out of long-established patterns of depression or anxiety. Another way you can distract yourself is to take your mind off resentment and take immediate action to defuse any anger at yourself or other people. Resentment, according to Alcoholics Anonymous' big book, says that it is the number one offender. It disturbs more alcoholics than anything else. From it stem all forms of spiritual disease. This business of resentment is infinitely grave. We found that it is fatal, for when harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the Spirit. The insanity of alcohol returns and we drink again. With us, to drink is to die, or to be depressed or anxious is to die. If we were to live, we had to be free of anger. The grouch and the brainstorm were poison. The greatest enemies of us alcoholics are resentment, jealousy, envy, frustration, and fear. I would agree that these are big enemies and need to be diffused. One more way, and there are many others, but one more way of distracting yourself from negative, destructive thoughts and words is to forgive yourself and those who've wronged you. It's important to realize that forgiveness starts with a decision, but is in fact a process that is set in motion when you simply become willing to forgive. After venting your hurt, anger, and loss, choose to forgive yourself and others and businesses and organizations. One of my friends, Dr. Phil Sutherland, says, you can forgive a rattlesnake, but you don't have to have lunch with it. Carl Menninger of the Menninger Foundation, the famed psychiatrist, once said at a lecture I attended that if he could convince the patients in psychiatric hospitals that their sins were forgiven, 3/4 of them would walk out the next day. So, what a difference forgiveness can make to you or other people. Guideline number 7. Develop and maintain a daily routine. I call it make your own basics. Let me explain. When we battle with instability of any kind, we need routine, structure, predictability. The benefits of a routine are that by implementing a basic routine each day, we gain some control over our inner and outer turbulence. We gain a sense of accomplishment from even the simplest tasks. I call this daily routine basics, meaning several basic to-dos every day that will give me a sense of routine, things that are slam dunk and able to do, measurable, and that can be revised from time to time. Here are some of my daily routines that gives me a sense of control and stability when everything else is falling apart. Brush my teeth and floss. Read my Bible or devotional and pray every day. Thank God for 3 things that happened yesterday that were positive in my life. Take my regimen of vitamins every day. Talk to my dog, scratch him, pet him, tell him I love him every day. And exercise at least 30 minutes 6 times a week. Now yours may not be the same thing, but this added structure to your life. I call it the daily basics. And research shows that establishing, for instance, a morning routine has lasting effects throughout the day. Sarah Wilson, in one of her books, writes, "My trick to beating anxiety at work." She's an Australian author and entrepreneur who deals with a chronic anxiety disorder. She says, quote, "I carve out the time every day to get up and get out the door and exercise. It sets the tempo for my whole day." Guideline number 6. Guideline 8. Focus on developing healthy, safe relationships with family and friends and strangers. Healthy rather than toxic. I'm sure you've heard the old saying, birds of a feather flock together. Hang around positive, upbeat people that are supportive rather than disquiet you. Proverbs 20 in the Bible says, "It is to one's honor to avoid strife, but every fool is quick to quarrel." The book of Ephesians, chapter 4 in the New Testament says, "Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace." Translated, I think that simply means do your best to be a peacemaker, to hang around positive people. Guideline number 9. Practice self-monitoring on a daily or weekly basis. If you own a new car or an older one, you are very aware of strange noises or squeaks, or the steering wheel turning one way or the other, like an alignment issue. Likewise, it is important to monitor yourself, just like car noises. This means learning about allergic reactions to your pills, as well as their side effects or potentially dangerous combinations. It means watching for changes in your body, your thinking, and your feelings. In your body, if you start getting a rash, your throat swells up, you start throwing up, starting getting diarrhea, something's wrong. That could be medically. It could also be anxiety or depression. You're thinking if all of a sudden you get very agitated, very fearful, then maybe it's something's going wrong. Or your feelings, you get very giddy or very exhausted or very afraid or very discouraged or very suicidal. Monitor what's going on. Portia Nelson has written a little essay called Autobiography in 5 chapters. It will help you learn to evaluate yourself and monitor yourself. That's very important. Guideline number 10. Set and maintain firm boundaries. A boundary, according to the dictionary, is any line or thing marking a limit, a border. It's important, therefore, to know your own limits, personal limits and professional limits. Setting boundaries protects you from people that involve you in conflict, confrontation, criticism, shaming, or blaming. These kinds of actions cause what I call inner owies. When people walk over our walls, our boundaries. It is critical to learn how to say no. No, I can't go to the party. No, I won't have that piece of apple pie. No, I can't attend that prayer meeting. No, I can't work overtime this weekend. I'm sure you've discovered that when you start using your no muscle, it gets sore, just like if you haven't used a muscle for a long time. The next day it's really sore. So when people look at you when you set a boundary and said no, then they will either look at you and say, well, how can you do this to me? Or they will simply say, well, why don't you do this one exception? Proverbs 24 says, flee evil people. Proverbs 27 says, the prudent see the danger and take refuge. A shocking fact is that when you say no to somebody, in whatever form that may take, 90 to 95% of the time, they will blame you or somebody else. A dentist friend of mine taught me how to set some boundaries and what to say. He said, use this little formula. I'd love to, sorry, I can't. I'd love to go to your birthday party, your anniversary party, your picnic, but I can't. I'd love to, but I can't. In this way, you are affirming that person and still setting your own boundary. So it's important to learn your limits at work, at social events, and other activities. Here are some of my boundaries. I only schedule 3 appointments a day. Sometimes I have to go more than that, but I usually pay the price. I avoid toxic people in meetings. I have a day each week. My wife and I have a date. Nobody else, just us. Sometimes it's just a walk on the beach or listening to a TV show or going to a movie or whatever. Another boundary we have made is no cell phones or home calls at mealtime. Another boundary is I try to make it to bed between 10 and 11 o'clock at night. Another boundary I've set because of my tendency to work really hard and long hours is to take 2 to 3 what I call mini moons a year with my wife Leah to get out of town for 1, 2, or 3 days. Again, you will have to figure out your own way to set boundaries, but these are some suggestions. Guideline number 11, set measurable, achievable goals. Helen Keller once said, when one door of happiness closes, another opens. But often we look so long at the closed door that we do not see the one which has been opened for us. My goodness, how true that is. So it's important to set and maintain realistic, measurable goals. You may have some goals and dreams that need to be revised. My friend Paul Abrams Constantine says, dreams are never destroyed, they're simply rearranged. I happen to function very well. I'm a very goal-oriented person. I have so many injuries due to athletics that about all I can do now is ride a stationary recumbent bike or walk. So I have competed in various senior games, they're also called Senior Olympics. I'm competing this July in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in the National Senior Games in the 1 mile power walk. I also participate and compete in Navy SEAL walks, raising money for them. That's nothing to most other people. I do it slow. My aim is simply to finish, but it gives me something to look forward to. So whatever your goals may be, personal or professional, it's important to have goals. Where there is no vision, the Bible says, of what God wants you to do, the people perish. Maybe a big question in this regard is, what is your goal A, B, or C? What are your backup goals? Are your goals down in writing? I'd like to lose 11 pounds. I'd like to do a mile in 14 minutes. I'd like to vacation in the Bahamas. Write your goals down. That's a strong suggestion. Guideline number 12. Do acts of service without any thought of being repaid. This means use your abilities, your skills, and your experiences, good and bad, to help other people in the world. Dr. Bob, one of the 2 founders of Alcoholics Anonymous, found that even if he practiced all 11 of the 12 steps of AA, it didn't keep him sober very well. But what worked for him was practicing the 12th step, which simply means after you've had a spiritual awakening, pass that on to somebody else. So he'd go to a bar and find somebody that was drunk as a skunk and share a story and be of an encouragement to that person. And that kept him going. I think one of the things that kept me going through my depressive anxiety episodes are being able to share with other people my own strength, hope, and experience. Author Mark Twain said, the best way to cheer yourself is to try to cheer somebody else up. Helen Keller says we are never really happy until we try to brighten the lives of others. I guess it would have been much easier for me to wait until I had my own act together before reaching out to help others, but I decided that hell could freeze over before I ever got fully healed from my depressive and anxiety battles. Instead, I chose to go on the offense and try to aid fellow strugglers. Because I still had bad days along with my good ones, I decided to put my best shots in on my positive, less depressed days. The way that you can reach out to other people is simply to share your story with others, your ups and your downs, what caused you to be diagnosed and what's been helpful and harmful in your recovery. Leonard Cohen, in his poem Anthem, says, ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Guideline number 13. Journal and do post-mortem debriefings. Someone once said those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. A lot of TV shows like CSI, Forensic Files, and others talk about the value of studying how a person died. When Navy SEALs or other special op military come back from an operation, they're debriefed, and anything goes. They share what worked and what didn't, what they messed up on. Here's a possible way that you can do a post-mortem after a tough episode you've experienced. 1. Was it caused by pills, side effects, bad mixture, over-the-counter things? 2. Was the episode caused by stress, one of the Holtzfosses? Was it an event or relationship? 3. What old buttons, old issues, old wounds were pushed by somebody? 4. What were my warning triggers, my warning symptoms before I broke down? What were my idiot lights showing? 5thly, what can I do differently the next time I see the warning signs of a depression or anxiety attack? Guideline number 14, maintain steady, regular sleep habits. Many people who live with depression or anxiety are prone to sleep problems, so it's important to pay attention to your schedule. A change in your sleep quality can be a symptom of something lurking. It's important to make sleep hygiene a high priority, as sleep deprivation is recognized as a common trigger for depressive episodes. When I find I can't get to sleep, I take a Tylenol PM. It has less side effects than many sleeping pills, plus it's not addictive. But everybody's got to find what works for them. The onset of persistent insomnia may be a warning that another episode is on the way. Sleep hygiene may be as important to fighting your depression or anxiety as any medication or talking therapy, sometimes even more so. Maintaining a regular sleep schedule with 8 or so hours of good solid sleep is very important. Guideline number 15, our last guideline, is find your own unique purpose in life despite your losses. Writer in philosophy Tolstoy wrote, "Rational knowledge led me to the conclusion that life is meaningless. My life came to a halt, and I wanted to do away with myself." Of course, later on he converted to Christ, but that came at a very crucial point in his life when he was imprisoned. Part of reinventing yourself is to go through the process of grieving your losses, redefining success, and reinventing your own purpose, your own self. Webster's New College Dictionary says success is 1, the result or an outcome, 2, a favorable, satisfactory income or outcome, and 3, gaining of wealth, fame, rank, etc. I like the way UCLA basketball coach John Wooden defines success. Success is a peace of mind that is the direct result of self-satisfaction in knowing you did your best to become the best that you are capable of becoming. When you've been forced to walk like you only had one leg through much of life, then you miss out on a lot and you've had to make a lot of changes in your life. And it can be very self-defeating in your outlooks. It's very critical, therefore, to recalibrate your view of yourself and your future by doing it several ways. 1, develop a more positive self-image, not as a victim or mental patient, but rather as a person who has a mental struggle such as depression or anxiety, who still has valuable skills and experiences to contribute to the world. The Bible says that as a person thinks in his or her heart, so is he or she. 2, a new view of yourself means finding a new hope. Years ago, the U.S. Cavalry had a little saying that if your horse dies, find another, saddle up, and move on. So if one dream dies, one goal dies, find another one. This will mean creating a new vision, a fresh purpose, a new role for your life. You may want to discuss this with your therapist or close friends who could look at you more objectively. This also means writing out your life goals, both short and long range, and revising and adapting those goals and plans when needed. I encourage you to take a while and write out your own life mission statement, and then get going. It's very hard to steer a parked car. Do what is next, what is necessary, what is right. And don't wait until you have your life all together to move out. For some who are unable to work full-time, I encourage you to do a day or two of volunteer work, or whatever you can, to use your skills, experiences, and abilities to make a difference in the world. Okay, it's wrap-up time. Rounding third, headed for home. As Dr. Joy Jaffe puts it, what happened to you was truly horrible, but you have a choice. You can live the rest of your life as a memorial service, or you can put it away and get on with it. Someone once said, life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass. It's learning to dance in the rain. Ellen Keller says, I am only one. I cannot do everything, but I can still do something. I will not refuse to do something I can do. In the book of Zechariah in the Bible, it says, who dared despise the day of small things? Interestingly, Walt Disney said, and he was no stranger to depression, by the way, and meltdowns, the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. Jim Rohn says, if you really want to do something, you'll find a way. If you don't, you'll find an excuse. So, just start anywhere. Just do the next thing. Getting well and staying well, even though you may be plagued by some of the symptoms returning from time to time, this requires being prepared to invest ongoing time, money, and energy to get better and stay better. Consider how much you've already lost in time, money, and energy during your setbacks and relapses. Why not try using that same time, pouring your efforts into preventative steps to recover and rebuild? Keep on educating yourself and others, attending support groups, getting counseling, reaching out to help others who struggle with a mind disorder. Someone once said, don't let what you can't do stop you from what you can do. In the 1992 Olympics, British Olympian Derek Redmond unknowingly modeled how to persist even when his hopes were demolished. He tore a ligament midway through his race. As rest of the runners went on to finish, he writhed in pain on the track. His hopes, dreams, and months of hard work lay crumpled on the track. Then, determined to finish the race, he began to push himself off the ground and started to run again. But after only a few short strides, his legs failed and he slowed to a tottering walk. At that point, an older spectator appeared on the track. Security guards tried to stop the man, but he was as single-minded as the runner. Seeing this unexpected spectacle, the crowd erupted in standing applause. The two crossed the finish line together. The man was Derek's father. Sometimes a hope like Derek's can be modified or saved, but it usually takes courage and sheer determination. In the same way, your Heavenly Father is also cheering you on. So get up, get going, and finish your race. In Isaiah chapter 41, verse 10, God says, so do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Lastly, a comment from Winston Churchill has rung through the years. Remind yourself often of his energizing words. Never give up, never give up, never give up. My friends, God bless you. I hope you have a wonderful year ahead. Thanks for listening.
This concludes our fourth and last seminar session on Tricks of the Trade, practical hands-on tools and strategies for recovering and rebuilding from depression and anxiety. Thank you for listening. Hopefully, Dr. Stout's seminar on depression and anxiety recovery will be available on YouTube for many months or years. If you missed a session or wish to listen again to another one, please visit YouTube and simply type in Dr. Jim Stout and select the session you wish to hear. Also, if you know anyone who might benefit from these sessions, please pass on the information. Thank you.